Are you tired of watching shows that only give you general social media theory and expect you to figure out how to apply it to your own industry? Join us for this week's episode of Social Chatter, the industry's longest running social media marketing news talk show. Not only will you learn the latest breaking news, but you'll also gain practical advice on how to apply it. Now here's your host, Christian Karasevich.
Welcome everyone to Social Chatter, your weekly social media marketing news talk show. This is episode 325 with myself, Sarah Monroe, and this week's guest. And you actually heard from her, I think it was last week when we did social media trends for 2022, what we thought was going to happen. So without further ado, I'm going to go and bring on Sarah. We're going to kick things off. And I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. We've got a lot of really great tips and a lot of news this week. The first show of 2022. How awesome is that? So Sarah, it's great seeing you. How you doing?
I'm great. Happy New Year. Brand new year. Brand new things to learn about social media, right?
Definitely. And it's funny you mentioned that. It reminds me of I don't know if you follow DJ Khaled over on like Instagram, but his whole thing was like brand new, like everything in I think 2021. And he was getting like brand new teeth, like brand new clothes, brand new like everything basically. And that was all he was talking about.
Yeah.
So
I have to say, DJ Khaled, not my demo, but that's okay. There are a lot of folks who are talking about how the new year will be new. And one is our guest today, Juliette Stapleton, because if we remember last week, what she talked about is how she thinks there will be a massive shift in how we show up online. And Juliette is a visibility strategist and expert. So we might as well bring her right on and say Happy New Year, Juliette.
Juliette, how you doing?
Happy New Year! I'm so glad to be in 2022. I will tell you that.
It's good to see you. It's good to have you back. I mean, I know we had you join us. I know you sent in your prediction for 2022 last week, so it was great having you there. And then it's also great having you back live with us. So thanks a lot for joining us for episode 1 of 2022. So
I am so honored. I'm really, really honored to be here. And I was watching your episode last week, so it kind of feels like I was on the show, even though, yes, I was in a little clip. And so to open the new year, and I'm excited about the new year, and I'm not buying into any fears and anything. I'm looking forward to this new energy. I think that there's already a shift. So thank you for having me.
Anytime. So Sarah, I'm going to turn it over to you. We got a lot of news we want to make sure we cover. We also want to make sure we are mindful of our guest time and whatnot. So
exactly.
So what's going on this week in social media? What's the big topic that everybody's been discussing?
The big topic, and this topic came from Adam Mosseri himself on Instagram, not on Twitter, actually used an Instagram reel to announce that Instagram is going to change up the news feed. And I'm going to quote Adam. He said, "It's important to me that people feel good about the time they spend in the app." Now, does this nod to a lot of things that we've been talking about in the past year about mental health and how people are consuming social media? Absolutely. So what Instagram's answer to this is a 3-part news feed. At least that's what they're talking about right now. So what they're going to do is change up. So you're going to have home, which is pretty much like your home feed right now. It's going to be an algorithmic sort of the posts that you follow and also the suggested posts that Instagram thinks that you would like to see based on your previous behavior. So it's really important to remember Instagram is all about your previous behavior, what you've been doing and what they think you're going to like next. So this feed, the home feed, will be people you followed and the suggestive posts, pretty much like how Instagram works now. The next one is going to be favorites. Well, actually, the list that they showed in the screenshot, favorites is last on the list. But anyway, favorites are all the posts from people who you favorite. So this is very much like how Facebook works. Supposed to work. Facebook, you can tag people as favorites, close family members, things like that. Everybody in the backstage, those who can't see us on screen, everybody's chuckling with their mics off about how Facebook is supposed to work. But anyway, The favorites feed will be so that you can really curate. You can just see the updates from the people that you want to see and the brands that you want to see, or the creators. And then the next one is following, which is going back to how Instagram used to be, at least what they're saying, is a full chronological feed. So if you're following hundreds of accounts, imagine how much information that is to try to keep up with or consume. So it's that fire hose effect of social media. What a lot of people don't like about Twitter is that chronological feed, which is why Twitter also implemented a algorithm. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out, and if people really can, if the favorites feed really will be just that very defined list. Twitter's tried it with Twitter lists. Like I said, Facebook has the favorites option. So Instagram is now going to this very customized, personalized experience. And so I'll open it up to see what you two think about this.
I gotta say, I think the big piece to the Instagram chronological feed, as they're calling it, is the fact that it's only going to be as good as you manage it. So you can have all these sorting options. Like you can have home, you can have following, you can have favorites, but there needs to be a strategy behind everything that you do. It's not just like, hey, I'm going to go follow all these accounts. Because when you go follow these accounts, think of it like this: you're impacting the algorithm, everything you like, every account you follow. So I think, starting 2022 off, while they haven't yet rolled this out, my suggestion would be to have people go and actually look at, like, hey, who are you actually following? Are you getting value out of that person still? And consider either replacing them with somebody else, or if they're worth it, keep them, put them in your favorites, for example. So that's my prediction. What do you think, Juliette?
Well, Instagram for me, a disclaimer, is that it's my the cat tricks and dogs tricks platform where I don't market. I just go there for my own enjoyment to dump, the busy brain. But I like the idea. I personally like the idea of a chronological order and being able to check that. I totally second every word you just said about being in control. I preach that when it comes to Facebook newsfeed. When people complain about what they see, you're in full control. Everybody has a unique timeline that they're looking, or unique newsfeed, whether it's, Facebook or now Instagram. You need to take control who you follow, who you allow in your world. I'm very particular about who I want to see and what sort of information I want to be exposed to. I think it's a good move. We will see how it will take on. But yes, wasn't there a whole strategy, especially in the old days? And I don't market on Instagram, but there was a lot of profiles that just followed other profiles just to get a follow back. So there would be a lot of noise on many people's profiles. I know I only follow a bunch, and I kind of unfollow people when I see that they don't give me enough value. I just unfollowed Gary V there for that kind of level, that same reason. So, you can just do that and clear it up. You don't have to be in one day, but definitely do that.
Definitely. Yeah. And I do agree. Like, yeah. And there were people that like would do the whole, you follow me, I'll follow you back thing. And then they'd stop doing it. So again, you need to, like, just like everything, like for social media, it's great. Step one is like, I've got accounts. Step two is, okay, I need to have a strategy about, like, what do I want to get out of the account? What's going to go on the account? It's not, I post the same thing from one channel to the next. I do need to vary that up, whether it's a short video clip on one channel, leading back to like the full channel, like for example, to YouTube to go watch the full video. You do need a strategy of sorts. And I want to make sure we highlight, first off, I want to make sure we highlight this great comment from NLTW, who says, I would prefer if an algorithm doesn't decide that I need to see posts from 3 days ago by someone with a larger following instead of something that was posted today by a smaller account. Absolutely. Size should not matter. You're right. It should not matter in terms of what you see, what you don't see. It should be, like if you're watching like certain types of content, then maybe they should surface, like, if it's marketing content, they should surface some marketers, things like that. But there should be more flexibility, I think, over that overall. So let me do this. Let me bring Sarah back in. Sarah, how we doing?
Oh, you gotta love the tech gremlins, you know? Right out of the gate of the first year. So I haven't heard anything that you said, but I'm sure it's fabulous advice. And NLMTW, I know that a lot of people have a problem with the algorithm. You may have already said this in the show. A lot of people have a problem with the algorithm and how machine learning is trying to decide what we will and won't like. But that's part of the addictive behavior of social media, is that it keeps feeding what we like. And so you stay on, right? And it's all based on your behavior. I think it'll be interesting if reporters have tested this in the past, like liking everything on Facebook or doing something on Twitter, just to see if they can get the algorithm to tweak out and see how they can manipulate it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Instagram and people testing the limits of it.
Absolutely. So do me a favor. Let's recap real quick. So we have the chronological feed, as they're calling it, but
Home.
I guess deep down it's home. So home is every single account you follow and recommendations, right?
Yep. It's basically as it is now. So the algorithm's deciding what it feeds to you. Now, keep in mind, you will see everything that's been posted by the people who you're following if you scroll far enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And okay, so that's home. Following or people that you set up like list, right? So if I'm a business, how do you think I could use the following tab and the favorites tab?
So actually following is just the chronological. Favorites are the ones that you actually say, these are my favorites and I just want to see them. So the part where businesses can get into that is where you want to get onto that favorites tab. So you get onto that prime real estate where people are following their friends and family and the content that they care about most. So let's say that you're a coach like Juliette. Juliette has fantastic advice for people who are online, just in general, right? Being visible online and also working with your personality type and how you plan and run your business, right? So I like seeing Juliette's content. And so I will follow her in my favorites tab, right? So you want to be that business, that brand, that creator, that people favorite, so that you see them in that very, very elite list of accounts that you follow.
Got it. And that makes a lot of sense. And by the way, for those who are watching, like, we've been doing this show for a long time, and Google Plus used to be a platform that a lot of people used. And one of the tactics that a lot of people did was they created buckets for followers. They set up
circles.
Exactly. Right. They're called circles. And they set up various ones. And it was like, okay, so people got into one bucket when they initially made that connection with somebody. And some people immediately jumped to like the third bucket that was set up. And again, but it comes back to what Juliette and I were talking about earlier, which is you do need to do some management on this. So obviously we know friends and family are going to go in certain ones. But think about it from a business perspective. Maybe you put your competitors into certain ones, put your competitors into certain buckets. Maybe you have, like, even though you can't create additional buckets outside of these three, maybe you put somebody on the list of like, almost like a watch list, like, hey, I want to pay attention to some people that, I'm not sure I want to follow them yet, but I still want to see their stuff.
You can create a Finsta. You can create a fake Instagram account where you follow all of your competitors and they're on that favorite list, right? Yeah. So there's awesome. Absolutely that. Yeah.
And by the way, thanks, Bob. Bob's chiming in that this is episode. He's definitely be watching again. Yeah, can't take enough notes. So any other tips you want to share on how to use the Instagram chronological feed? I realize this is not coming out yet. They say that the first half, I think, of the year.
I think chronologically it's going to burn people out. I think it's one of the reasons why people have a hard time with Twitter. Is trying to keep up that fear of missing out. Of course, you can always go to the different profiles. You can go to your favorites tab, but it's going to be a lot. And this is why the algorithms have come into play, is because there's so many accounts and so many users on each platform that we can't possibly consume all the content.
Very true. I will say this. One other thing I would add, as a tool to help supplement this, I think I'm a big fan of Pocket. And so Pocket's this like browser based tool where you can, you can save pretty much anything you want there. I almost would say, maybe if there's certain things on Instagram that you like, maybe you get them into your pocket and you tag it as Instagram. And then that way, as you have time, you can quickly scroll through that and all the other stuff that you want to consume. Maybe, I don't know, just a thought. But
I can add to that because I actually use heavily safe Instagram post. I have created loads of categories, and if I don't have time to really get into the post, I just save it. And I love Instagram. As I said, I don't market my own business on Instagram, but I follow a lot of people who inspire me because I'm a very visual person, and sometimes like a little quote or some sort of small snippet of information, I really bounce off. I can go and write an article, from that. So having this kind of saved, it's the same on Facebook. I mean, the challenge is to go back and check it out. But when you have time, if you are planning, what you're doing, and you can dedicate time to go in and see what's in your saved posts as a business and what you can strategically use. And in terms of following as well, competitors and people who inspire you, like what I'm saying, people who you can bounce off ideas, so they're not necessarily competitors. Maybe they're just inspiring you in your industry. So there's so many ways that you can use these three categories anyway.
Right.
Excellent.
It's definitely worthwhile taking the time to set up those categories, because now I'm saving real audios and music and things like that, and I don't have anything categorized. It's just one big mess. So I need to sit down and, do the sort.
I'm the same exact way. But again, this is the beginning of the year. So it's also about, doing a little housekeeping, tidying up some things like, hey, if you've got if we look at email and you go back through hey, I've got emails from 2020, for example. Do I need those emails still? If not, archive them. They're still going to be there. So, same concept. Think about the stuff that you've got, and quickly just, set yourself up for success for 2022. Don't let that stuff weigh you down. So I got one quick question, and that's for all of our viewers. If you're watching, do us a favor. Let us know, how would you like to sort your Instagram feed? Do you prefer the home option, the favorites, or the following option? So, Sarah, what's your recommendation going to be?
I think I will probably use favorites a little bit. I mean, I'm a person, when we talk about friends and family, I actually don't follow some of my family members just because they post so much. They don't watch the show. So I'm good there. But I will probably use home just because Instagram personally is a happy place for me. And so I do have similar habits on Instagram, so I will probably keep using home. I bought many things. I'm not wearing any of the bracelets right now, but I bought things on Instagram. It knows me, and it's sort of that mental and visual break that I take. So I'll probably
Juliette,
still use home.
What's your take, Juliette?
I sometimes like the idea of a chronological order, because it's interesting for me to see who's posted just the recent. Sometimes I feel a little annoyed when Facebook keeps showing me the same posts I've already seen from 3 days ago, just because they're trending. I'm like, I'm getting like, oh, what's going on? Did they post about it again? Especially early in the morning when I have my coffee. And so with Instagram, I would probably be checking out just for my own curiosity. What's new? I want to be the first to know. I'm not always the first to implement, but I like researching. So, that's one of the ways. And then I'm already very strategic about who I follow. So it's a very concise feed. And I don't think it's going to be very overwhelming for me. And favorites, absolutely, I will have that.
Very cool. So my vote's going to be, I'd prefer to use the favorites, I think, just because it's nice to have access to the other ones. But I think, favorites is where, I don't want to make that list too big, but I want to make sure that it's, the main accounts, so I can quickly just go through it. Because again, it's very easy to get lost in the feed. Remember, everybody has a life. So, so that's my vote. Okay. So Sarah, turn it over to you. What else happened in social media this first week of 2022?
Well, the first week, we're actually going to jump back to the last week of December, since our last two shows have been recaps. So we did want to talk about Clubhouse. I know it's controversial. A lot of people are saying that Clubhouse isn't a thing anymore. But Clubhouse is going to an option where you can save recorded Clubhouse rooms to replay later. So it's save replays. And it's also got a share icon. The news didn't really, so the folks who found these little nuggets didn't really talk much about what that share icon is going to be. But for sure, being able to save the replay so you don't have to go back. It's like Juliette was just saying, and I do the same. Save into these collections so that you can go back and listen. So really, the long and the short of this announcement is basically that Clubhouse is going to be more like a podcasting app, right? Where you can just go and find things that have already happened. So Clubhouse popularity has dropped, I think, because of not having this replay option. And now they're bringing it back in. The question is it too late? Is it too late for Clubhouse? But also the thing to think about, there's a lot of talk. We heard it in our recap show that was last week too, is audio dead? I wouldn't say that audio is dead. Live audio may be difficult to continue, but for sure podcasts are still thriving, right? And still very much at play. So I'll open it up to everybody else to see what you think about this. It's basically becoming podcasting, right? Is my impression of this news piece?
It sort of is, yeah. And I think what would be really interesting would be, okay, so, and I'm speculating here. I love the idea that you could save the replay. I'd love to know, like, could I then put that into Dropbox or something and then immediately turn that into a podcast episode that goes up on my podcast host? Because that would be pretty cool. Because then I'd be able to stream. Like right now, we're streaming out to Twitter, for example, Spaces. It lets me save a replay, but does that give me access to a saved file? That'd be pretty neat. If I could then add the bookend, the intro, the outro, and quickly produce a show. So I'm intrigued.
It didn't say download. Sorry.
I know.
Said save in the app. Yeah.
I'm just wondering. I mean, it would be maybe worth testing. So what do you think, Juliette?
I just recently saw a memory on Facebook, and it was a post I made last year about FOMO and how I'm not going to Clubhouse because everybody's going to Clubhouse, and warning people off, running into yet another platform when their customers might not be there. And now nobody is even mentioning Clubhouse on my timeline anyway. So I have no expertise because I have never used it. I like the idea. Like I did research. I like the idea that if you have an app that, audio based, and especially if it's kind of live audio that you have to be there, that replays is a big thing. I don't have time to attend live shows. I do prefer watching and listening to stuff on a replay where I can speed it up as well and save some time and consume the information that way. So for me, it's a very positive move. But maybe it's too late. I like that angle.
Very cool. Yeah. So awesome. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen. I'm going to see what's going to happen just overall with, just where Clubhouse goes in terms of like, just as a platform. I got to say, I've actually started to like what Clubhouse has been doing. And that's just because I feel like they're starting to do a lot more. Which is creating healthy competition, I think, between that and Twitter Spaces. I still think Twitter Spaces is going to win out because Twitter's been around longer. People are used to the platform. It has a lot more to it than just being an audio room. And so, but I do like the direction things are going. I like that they're challenging people. I will have to check out if you can do some sort of save option. I mean, because it is on mobile. I'm going to have to see if you can save it on mobile and then see if there's a way to maybe copy a link, or if there's some sort of file they give you access to. That would be really awesome if they did. I think it would help cut out a lot of the extra steps that a business might use.
Right. Juliette, I wanted to ask you, just jumping back a little bit to what you were saying about live audio. Because we've talked about this too, about this live audio experience. It's like radio, right? Radio has been around for more than a century, right? Because people like to listen to people and be part of that experience, but you can also replay it. So are you a podcast consumer?
honestly, not a regular podcast. When I do research, when I am looking for, I have a podcast. I've two. I create content, but I create content not to be providing, not to add to the world of podcasting, but to add to the world of my following with a different way of consuming the goodness that I might serve them with. So that's why I do this. If I have to research a guest or something, I do listen and sometimes binge on their content if it's good. So I like the idea of listening to something while I'm doing things, but I'm not someone who has the radio or podcasts on. So it's hard. I haven't even used Facebook live rooms, and that's a confession from a Facebook girl. It's just something that I didn't feel drawn to.
Right.
Well, and that's the thing you guys got to also realize. I mean, just like platform wise, there's so many shiny objects that you can chase. It's about finding the one that's going to work for you. And here's the thing: if it is audio rooms, if it's live video, again, you got to test them out. You got to see what's going to work with you and your audience, what your audience likes to spend time on.
Right.
Okay.
So my thought when I read this news was, what is Spotify Green Room going to do? Because we haven't heard much from it since it launched in the summer, and I think that's a real player in this live audio space and the replay space, since they have that podcast option for your Spotify playlists and things. So
yeah, no, absolutely.
Throwing it in there.
So Sarah, sticking with audio rooms, I think we had some other news, right?
Yep. Sticking with audio rooms is Twitter Spaces. So Twitter Spaces is going to give hosts the option to limit access into a Twitter space. So you can invite people, or you can just offer it to your tweeps, which is Twitter speak for your followers on Twitter. So what's interesting is that in reading this news, I didn't realize that the Twitter Spaces tab isn't available to all users yet. So we may be speaking to some people who haven't seen any of this. Anyway, when you start a Twitter space, you will be able to invite people and decide who those folks will be. So really, you can create this custom audience. Think of it like Facebook group audio. Facebook announced that over the summer too, that they were going to bring audio rooms to groups. So this is sort of Twitter's answer to that, and maybe even Twitter's answer to a Clubhouse room too, so that you're not broadcasting to the entire Twitterverse, but you can select who your audience is. So I think it's a pretty cool tool. It's going to be interesting how people use it, especially if they want to thank their the folks who contribute to them, or there's any super fans or specific users that they want to talk to in a Twitter space.
Yeah, definitely. I got to say the one piece that I think is going to happen here, just real quick on this, is I think Twitter is probably going to be aligning this with like Twitter Blue at some point to offer it as part of a subscription, or like a subscription service where, you'll be able to broadcast to everyone, but then you'll also be able to do kind of like if you think about YouTube has channel memberships that people can sign up for. And so it's content only for those people. I think we're going to see the same thing. And I think the same strategy is going to apply. The same strategy is you don't have to do everything. You don't have to be everywhere, and find the place where that is and build on that spot instead of trying to be everywhere on every platform. Get really good at one of them. So that's my
right. And Twitter's giving you all of the tools. So you don't have to subscribe to another podcasting distribution service. You don't have to subscribe to all of these other things. You can be right there on Twitter with all of the different pieces.
Absolutely.
To connect with your audience.
Anything else you want to add, Juliette?
I was just checking my Twitter app. I do not have spaces, so can't really add too much. I'm one of those. I don't really use Twitter much. I don't have a problem with their newsfeed, but I have a problem with the character limit. I like going long, so I can't express myself on Twitter, and that's it. And I know we're going to be talking about a particular app later on in the show, and that's what I use Twitter for. So not really. But I do like the sound of what it is. I do like the idea or what the concept that they're offering, and so I'm kind of on board with the idea here.
Nice. So, okay, so we got that news this week from Twitter. Sarah, was there anything else happening this week?
Yeah, a couple more things. Want to give just a quick rundown. YouTube is going to add some custom messaging to thank the super fans. So it's not just the generic little bubbles that can pop up, but you will be able to offer a special thank you to thank folks who are contributing to you through the super thanks option. And let's just run quickly through the next two pieces too. Meta is changing how you can configure your ads, and their whole announcement is just full of very long words. They are moving to outcome-driven ad experience. That sounds fabulous, doesn't it? And they even admit that their ad platform has become increasingly fragmented. This is a quote: increasingly fragmented, difficult to use, and complex, which is the most obvious statement that has ever been made about Facebook and Instagram advertising. So basically, they're addressing this pain point that everybody has. They are bringing in some standard language around marketing and advertising. If you've ever been a media buyer and put together campaigns, you know that the language and the logic tree of Facebook ads just is not intuitive. So this very complex grid is their quote unquote simple way of explaining how this will be reconfigured. So I would say, go to the news announcement. If you're working in Meta advertising, go to the news announcement. You'll see how things are going to be compressed, recategorized. They're really putting a whole new taxonomy on the ad platform. So to make it easier for all of us, especially those of us who have bought media in other platforms and other channels, right? It's going to make a lot more sense with all the simplification. We can hope, right? I shouldn't promise that it's going to make more sense, but we can hope it'll make more sense. Another piece, TikTok is now adding a text live intro to live feeds, so that if someone is joining your live broadcast on TikTok, you can put in a little text intro to welcome them, tell them a little bit maybe about what the broadcast is about. So as folks are just jumping in, they're not, they get eased into what you're talking about. So TikTok is struggling with these longer videos on the platform and how they can stay relevant, because I think that attention span, there's still a lot of people who have that short attention span, but there are a lot more people who want to see longer content from their favorite creators. So that's why I think we're seeing a lot of TikTokers move over to YouTube. And so this is just another special touch to add onto TikTok, where, on YouTube, you have captioning. On Facebook Live, you have captioning, right? Not captioning, but you have captions so that people can read what this is going to be about as they join the live feed. So a few more bells and whistles to TikTok, essentially, is what that means.
I got to say, it's rather interesting. I like the idea of putting the intros there, encouraging people to, like, if they're just joining part of like what you're doing, instead of having to like repeat that throughout the, like, for example, if you're doing a long live broadcast, you often will repeat the intro multiple times. Like, hey, for those of you who just joined us, for example, at the 30-minute mark here, we're talking about Instagram chronological feed. In this case, TikTok live intro videos, things like that. But it's nice that this would go into that shorter form content. So who knows? We'll see where things head. Again, every platform is trying to do the same thing. And, it's like they have to offer the short form content, but then they got to figure out, well, hey, it's like Clubhouse. Clubhouse is audio only. How do they stay relevant? For example, when you've got other platforms doing audio only, and then they have a competing product like Twitter. They have audio, and then they also have, tweets, text tweets, for example, and multimedia. So they got to find obviously a way to stay relevant. So that's pretty awesome. I mean, just I like the fact that they're sort of challenging one another. So, awesome. Well, there's a lot of good social media news this week. So what we're going to do is we're going to put all of that in the blog post recap. For those of you who are new here, every episode, we always have a guest on, and we always have that guest share something with our viewers. So it is time for Q&A. Isn't that right, Sarah?
It is time for Q&A, and we have a fabulous guest, Juliette. And one of the things that Juliette is great about is strategizing your digital presence and also bringing in your strengths as a person to how you market yourself and how you show up online. So Juliette, it's a new year. Everybody's into planning, right? So we wanted to talk to you about the best ways to plan for social media. And I'm going to add it, I'm going to sneak in a little bit here because Juliette and I are both sort of consumers of and experts in personality types and playing to and how to evaluate your strengths. So Juliette, we're gonna sneak that in. We're gonna give some people some vegetables with this hot topic, right? So
Awesome.
What is the best way to plan your social media and playing to your strengths?
I love that. I am not a big long-term planner, and that gives me the right to talk about planning, because there's so many people out there who tell you about, plan your year 12 months in advance, plan everything, then you have this overview. Well, the truth is that it works for some people and it completely doesn't work for other people. I am from that other people section, right? For me, planning that far is just overwhelming. And also I live in the now. Whatever happens in 3 months, I might have a different direction because I'm very fluid in the way, and that's how I designed my business. And a lot of people can find that they find it overwhelming to plan ahead. Now, talking about your strengths and what's the best way, obviously the best way will be the way that works for you. And in order for you to know what works, what doesn't work, you need to try different strategies. So, try and plan your year in advance and see how it feels. It's all about how we feel about what we're doing, because we have to really be in the flow with what we're doing, not just listen to our brain dictating that this is how the things should be done, because there's no point creating a plan, right, and not following it through because it just doesn't feel right or other things interfere. So with I know that you sneaked in the personalities, and actually 2021 was the year where, after 22 years of digital marketing expertise building, I opened that closet I was in and came out and I said, okay guys, I am going to start positioning myself as a human design expert who talks about how to add your human design to marketing. So human design, for those who don't know, in very, very short, it's kind of like an energy profiling, like personality profiling, but it just has to do with your energy, and it has a mix of astrology and either other philosophies, and it's a very peculiar but extremely accurate way of determining what's for you, what's not for you. And so with the planning of the social media, generally, it's really good to know, and not to know because you already are. That's why it's called human design. So it's good to really lean into something that's natural to you. I still do planning because, and I'm going to talk now about, something that not so woo-woo, but just how can you approach planning of your social media content in terms of what do you need to include. It doesn't matter how long ahead you're going to plan, how it's going to be on paper. You have to think about what are you going to actually talk about. And I work mostly with experts and coaches and people who share their knowledge, using Facebook in my case. So I recommend focusing on, you definitely need to focus on 4 areas, right, in what you're planning. I would say 30% of your content needs to be about your business brand or personal brand, preferably personal brand. And I'm very big ambassador for personal brands and being the face of your business, because people connect to people, not logos, not pretty websites. They connect to you. They will give their hard-earned cash to you because they like you. Just simple as that. That's the bottom line, right? So I like sharing. You can be very strategic about it. You can share what you believe in. You can share your stances. You don't have to share what you had for breakfast. It's completely up to you how you're going to show up. leaning into who you are, your natural traits, what attracts people. This is what I like human design for. You can really clearly determine, looking at your design, what other people, what is magnetic in you that you maybe not consciously even realizing, but what's magnetic in you to other people. So you can lean into that for your personal brand. 40% of your content should be educational or, edutainment, whichever way you want to present it, whatever way suits your personality, but it needs to be tight around your offer. What the mistake I see a lot of business owners doing is that they're coming up and they're like, okay, I'm in this industry, I'm just going to talk about everything. And they're not talking about just like limiting it to what they are actually working with their clients. They're adding too much on top of that. And so what happens is that the audience, potential clients, are not clear enough what do these experts actually do. How do I know that? Because I've failed at that myself. When I had once a survey and I asked, what do you think I do? And people say, you just make me visible online. But making visible online is it's just such a vague terminology. It's just such a vague thing. So what exactly? And out of 15 people, only one person told me exactly what I was offering at that moment. Only one person got clear, and that wasn't good enough. So that's how I learned, and this is something that I recommend doing. So create, write down, like look at if you are selling, for example, if you're a coach and you have a program, look at the modules of the program and then create content around questions that someone before they join your program can have about this this program. If you're a retailer, what questions can your clients have or your customers have before buying the product, during using the product? What are the most frequent things that arise? So these are the things that you can create content, and that could be 40% of your roughly 40% of your content, right? So that leaves us with another 30. And from that 20%, you should spend on building up your credibility for your brand. So position yourself as authority, because, money flows to status and celebrity. If you don't look like you're a go-to name in your niche and you're not focusing on building your authority, some people will just naturally go to someone who looks, whose cover looks shinier. So what do I suggest that you do? Maybe share testimonials, start a podcast, share your podcast, write articles for your blog, share those, write guest articles for larger publications. A lot of publications like medium.com is, they don't require any pitching or any being approved. You just publish your article and that's it. But spread yourself and add these credibility markers, because now you're published on Medium, now you have the podcast, now you have you're a guest maybe on a show, you start an interview series, be a guest on other interview series, summits, and share that. So the good thing about this is that there's so many tools that you can use to take pressure from doing this all the time. For example, every time that I get published or I'm on a show like this, I would create a post and I would add it to, I use Social Bee, to a social media scheduling tool. And I love Social Bee, and we talked about it on this show, because they allow these content buckets that just post over and over. Say every Thursday, I will have a post about one of my past appearances on the shows. So everything that I do gets added to this category, and eventually this category grows so much that it's constantly adds to my content and positions me as authority to new followers, and reestablish it with the followers I already had, and I don't have to do anything at that moment, right? So build that content, and 10%, the last 10%, the most important thing: make direct offers. And this is specifically for experts and coaches who forget, who think that people will guess, or they say, okay, send me a message and we'll talk about how can I help you. But people don't send messages unless they know already how you help them. So give that information, create invitation posts, just be direct, lead them to where they can read more, not with an intention that they necessarily buy that minute, but it's just to educate them. So when you add it as a 10% of what you are going to post, it creates this good holistic view of who you are as a person, as your authority, your expertise, and then exactly how you help people. So I hope I answered your question.
Absolutely. Actually, that was I was over here feverishly taking notes. So no, that was very good. I like how you broke down, how you can take that 100% and break out. I was actually thinking the last 10% was going to be like a trial, like, leave 10% for fun or 10% for exploring various
Mhm.
projects. But I love how you've broken that down, that 30, that 40, that 20, that 10%. We're going to make sure we put that in the show notes, by the way, for this episode. So,
Yes.
so Sarah,
Juliette,
Your personal
Juliette,
brand, yes,
yeah, your personal brand. Go ahead.
your personal brand is where you add all the fun.
Mhm.
That's the fun. For me, it's humor, memes, cats, dogs, whatever I can use. I use my puppy is literally like a theme in my business. That's part of my personal brand.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can use that up.
I think your puppy posts this past year have been yes, the ups and downs of raising a puppy, right? But what I like about it too, and this is something that you mentioned last week too, is that you would pose the question, are you here to give or are you here to get? And that formula that you have is very much giving, right? Giving to the internet, giving to your customers the information that they need even before they know they need it. So I really do love that. And so another question, you had said, I don't plan that far in advance. And, all of us in social media with the changes that happen so frequently, the platforms, get in our way too. We want to be nimble and try the new tools, but we also want to plan ahead. So you had said you're not a big planning in advance person. I have some things already tagged for October that, I'm one of those things will change, but I am looking that far ahead. So what's your advice about this pressure of planning very far ahead when that may not be where your energy or your strengths are and things keep changing?
Well, this is exactly the key. So this is where you look within. This is where you go to the personality tests, human design, those things that tell you, your brain works in a certain way. This is the tendencies. Now, this is not about labels and things like that, and there could be, for example, I'm saying I'm not a planner. You know how many lists I have? I have 5 journals and like loads of different planners because I like strategizing and I like seeing things. But what can happen is that I can get very, and guys, I'm a solopreneur. I create my business. My business is flexible because it goes with the flow of my soul in a way. So if I get bored with the offer I created, if I just get feeling kind of stuck and I want something new, I allow myself then to change. So if you have that kind of business where you can allow yourself to pivot, then planning 12 months ahead might not even work for you. But mostly it is due to personality. I have amazing clients who are so brilliant with planning and they would have their year planned out, and that's the way that helps them move forward. Whereas for someone like me, the best way to move forward is not to plan far ahead because that's very overwhelming, but just literally plan what's going to happen the next couple of steps. So I might plan what I want to achieve this week. What do I want to achieve this month? If I don't plan far ahead, I dream far ahead. So I think about what do I want to feel? Like what do I want to have? So maybe by the end of this year, I want to interview 100 human design experts on my new podcast, Visibility by Design, and then publish a book. Now, it might happen within a year, might not happen. If I say I want to do this by the 31st of December, that will overwhelm me. The targets overwhelm me. But if I just have this as a vision, it could be done in June because, who knows how my energy going to flow, and I might get it all done. So that's something. The far ahead bit is really, really personal. One thing I want to say though, don't go with what you should be doing. There could be someone like, an influencer who promotes planning ahead and you really like that person. They're vibrant, they're great, you feel like you trust them and you're like, it must work. If they're saying that they build their business because they're doing this, it must work. But they could be a different person with a different personality, with a different type, and that does work for them and it will kill you. Be aware of that.
I love what you said. I don't plan far ahead, but I feel far ahead. And I think, especially given the last 2 years, looking into a new year and new surges and the pandemic and things like that, having things to look forward to is really important. And especially for solopreneurs like all of us, when it's just the slog, the daily slog, how do I get through that checklist? Not having something to look forward to far ahead is really demoralizing. So,
and we need to stay connected. If we don't have these big visions, they might not be in our yearly plan, but just things that I'd love to see myself there. This is the place where I would feel recognized, where I would feel successful, where I'd feel satisfied doing. That's what you want. If you lose that bit, you can get really feeling stuck in your business. And I have experienced this myself, especially in 2020, 2021. For me, it was a very difficult time. I had to, that's maybe where coming out of the closet came up. I had to find and reconnect with what actually drives me, what actually excites me. And Christian knows because I invited him to do my podcast, and then I just didn't restart my old podcast. The energy wasn't there. We're doing things here, and we might still connect and do something else, but this is why connection and dreams and these visions, we have to connect to them. It's even more important to me, I think, than planning.
Mm-hmm.
And one last thing I just want to add real quick on this topic is, I love the idea of like, don't do content planning just because, hey, that's what somebody told you to do it. You do need to find, like, you need to test it out. You need to find that sweet spot. Like, where do you fit? Like, are you a person that, likes to plan a year in advance? If it's not a year, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's 3 months, maybe it's a month, maybe if it's a week. But you have to, you do have to test out a few different things, see what works, and then also kind of find that sweet spot. Like, okay, so I'm at the point where I want to be like pushing myself really far forward, and I feel comfortable. Okay, can I go a little bit beyond that versus like, oh, let me go completely to the opposite end of the spectrum. So that's excellent advice. In terms of how far in advance a business should start their content planning process. So Sarah, do we have any other questions for Juliette?
Well, the last question actually can tie into our tool of the week too. And I know, Juliette, you had mentioned another tool of the week, another tool that you use for planning. We did want to talk a little bit about planning. In this week's tool of the week, we wanted to talk about MissingLettr, which is actually missing a letter in their brand name, right? But this is meant to be an all-in-one kind of tool for planning, for helping you tease out different pieces of your content, maybe your longer content, into social media posts, especially for some folks who may struggle with saying, okay, I've now made this blog post that's 4 paragraphs. I can make this into 6 pieces of social media content. This tool helps you with that. Honestly, there's a lot to this. I haven't had a chance to dig into all of it. I have to say what stands out the most is the drip email campaign planning. And if any of you know what I'm talking about, this is sort of that logic tree of emails. That's what a drip campaign is, a logic tree of emails that you get once you engage with a brand or a piece of content. You suddenly get the welcome message, and then maybe a couple of days later you get something else that says, hey, you might be interested in this, or here's a special offer. Or if you buy something, you then move into another funnel of marketing emails. So any tool that can help me plan drip campaigns, I am open to exploring. So I am going to dive in a little bit more to MissingLettr. What stands out to you, Christian and Juliette, about MissingLettr?
I think for me, it's the drip process. Like, it's the fact, like, I use some other social media dashboard tools, and it's you create like a lot of people, they do is they just like push content out, right? There's no thought necessarily behind the strategy. And I think the drip concept is important because it's also about creating evergreen content as well, like content that, can live on. So like, if you go into like, this is part of a content planning process, like breaking things down, if you put out a lot of content and you're just like content, like you're just putting stuff out, some of that stuff is going to have a super short shelf life, and you've spent a lot more time on it than you really need to. What you really need to do is take that approach of making one really good piece of content and then creating, pieces that can be dripped out here and there, so that you aren't having to constantly just like go. Like, we're not a machine. And so that to me, that's a feature that I really like, is just the whole drip concept. So Juliette.
I agree. I have been a MissingLettr customer and user for the last 3 years. I think I was one of the earliest ones. So the things that email drip campaigns, talking about me not being an early adopter, even if I jump on board early, I use MissingLettr connected to my blog. So every time I publish a blog article, for example, I'm on this show, I'm probably going to create a blog article about being on the show with a few bits, and that's going to immediately be scanned by MissingLettr, create a campaign, and ask me, Juliette, how do you want it to promote? I can use 2 weeks boost, a blast, I think they call it. I can use 6 months, I can use 365 days, and they have this schedule that I set up, or they set up for me, and I can choose from for this article to keep going, back to this article. Okay, so maybe we're talking about the news here, and maybe it's not so evergreen. But for me, as a credibility marker, the fact that I was on this show is an evergreen piece of content. So that's how, I can use that. I write articles. This is exactly what Christian said. This is what I love. You put your time into research and pouring your goodness onto the paper, or, doing a video or something. You want to create content for your website, but your website competes with, millions of other websites. People don't necessarily comment and search for it sometimes, so it's good to remind them that you've written this and that and the other. And when I was talking about the 20% of your content that should be all about building your credibility, MissingLettr is one. MissingLettr and Social Bee are my 2 go-to. What I really like as well is that you can create different little quotes, how they called quote bubbles. Mm-hmm. So there are graphics that come. You can choose little small quotes from that. MissingLettr helps you. You don't need to be spending time on it, and select some sentences and sometimes very unpredictable sentences that are really good that you wouldn't think yourself. And sometimes you can go and edit them. And so you're creating this real versatile type of promoting your article rather than just the same post. So for example, with Social Bee, I can't do that. It will still sound the same, even though I can create variations of posts. But with MissingLettr, if I'm having a campaign over 2 weeks, every one of these posts could be different. And if as a user, for example, as my follower, I would see that Juliette posted this article, and maybe this quote didn't do anything for me, but next week there was some other sentence I'd rather read this, and I go and read this. So this is really, really good for me, and it really is one of my favorite tools, even though I haven't seen any of the new features. I'm going to check out that email drip campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. No, awesome. Yeah, and so I'd recommend people go and check that one out. That's MissingLettr. Juliette, in terms of the price, what's the cost of MissingLettr? Do you happen to know offhand?
I have a lifetime subscription I got very, very early on AppSumo.
I think I might have that same subscription actually. So
I'm looking. I didn't open it up. Open up the price.
I think $19 or something. It's not a crazy price. It's a very affordable tool.
Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. No, but I got to say, I'd recommend checking out tools that are going to help you, save you a little bit of time in that content planning process. Again, you need to be putting content out there, but you don't just need to don't need to be reinventing new content every single day. You need to take one piece and, create smaller iterations of it and whatnot. And so MissingLettr would be a good tool to help with that. So that way you can focus on, freeing up some time to do different things. Awesome. Well, this has been a great show, by the way. I just have one quick question for you. What's the best place for people to get in touch with you?
JulietteStapleton.com, or come find me on Facebook and send me a friend request. I don't hang out on my business page much. I use it for repurposing of that goodness. But yes, this is exactly so. Juliette.Stapleton. Send me a friend request. Let me know that you watch this show. Let's connect and take it from there.
Fantastic. And Sarah, how about you? How can people get in touch with you?
They can find me across social media at Sarah Monroe VT. And shout out to a few people who've been messaging me on Instagram. Thanks for connecting and letting me know that you saw me on the show. LinkedIn may be an easier place to find me as well. Message that you saw Social Chatter, and I'd be happy to connect and maybe even chat.
Fantastic. And I'm Christian Kirsevich at Social Chefs on all the social platforms. Just a couple of quick points. We have a blog post recap that's going to go out over the weekend, socialchefs.com/SC325. And our next show is going to be next Thursday, January 13th, actually. 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our guest is going to be Crystal Profit. She specializes in podcasting. So it's going to be great having her join us. Again, she's very good in the podcast space. So if you've been thinking about starting a podcast, we'll have to pick her brain and see if there's any way to use audio rooms or whatnot in there. But it should be a really great show. With that, I want to thank everybody for tuning in for episode 325, where we talked about Instagram's chronological feed, all the new sorting options coming to you. And then we had a great chat with Juliette all about social media content planning and whatnot. So with that, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. We will see you all next week. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye.